What's up everyone, it's Iceman Oz, aka Jay, and in today's video I got for you guys a discussion on the next Battlefield game. Now we're going to go really in depth. Me and a couple of buddies of mine who are part of the Battlefield community, really entrenched into the community, know what the community are thinking, and we're going to do pretty much a podcast type thing, and we're going to really get in depth into the next Battlefield game when it comes to gameplay design, the way the maps will work, and the time setting, and just a bunch of different things. So grab your popcorn, stay tuned, and let's do this. What are we going to discuss first, guys? What are we thinking here? A lot of different topics we're going to go over. The thing that I think's most interesting is when it comes to the core gameplay, what are we going to see when it comes to it? I guess a lot of it depends on the time frame, right? Because that's really what it will be based around.
Yeah, so we obviously have like the three different types of timelines. So past, present, or future. Obviously, with past, most people thought it was primarily going to be World War One, but I guess now with some leaks, it might be World War One, World War Two, Vietnam, maybe. With present, it would probably be a bit postmodern, with just continuing the Battlefield 3 and 4 franchise, and obviously with future, we have like the 2143 series. So like they each offer like sort of different gameplay. I think that if they went into the future, it'd be even more fast-paced than it is now. Although they wouldn't have to do it that way, just generally from how future games have gone in the past, they tend to be a bit more fast-paced. So yeah, that's pretty much what those timelines offer as far as gameplay. Like past tends to be a bit slower paced and clunky. Like if you look at Bad Company 2, that time era, it was a bit more clunky. I mean, that's just sort of the gameplay style that the game had.
Well, that really comes down to the gameplay, not necessarily the time frame. I mean, there's clunky gameplay in 2142, right? Yeah. So that really doesn't play a point into it. I think the way I see it generally is what is the most popular. Now, Jack Frags, a YouTuber that everyone should know if you're in the Battlefield community, did a poll, and World War II was the main the vote. Like there was a voting poll. World War II was the way to go for people. So EA would be, and DICE would be silly not to. Now, the way you got to think about it though is EA is not in direct control of how the game is made. DICE is in control of how the game is made. EA does have some influence, but that they aren't the be-all and end-all. DICE are. So they will have a vision for their game. We still don't know at the time of recording this what that vision will be, but we know that it's going to have to, whatever it's going to be, it has to release well, because with Battlefield 4 and Battlefield 3, I don't know if you guys agree, but they release generally pretty bad, in a very bad state.
Although I think EA, I mean, I don't know necessarily if this is EA or Visceral's part, but they seem to do a bit of a better job with Hardline. I mean, while the game might not necessarily be as popular, the launch itself was fairly smooth, and there weren't too many bugs. I mean, balance wasn't necessarily great, but the game did launch well. And I think if they were to go past, though, I mean, the active Battlefield community may want past, but as far as bringing in new players, which is obviously something that EA is constantly looking at, I'm not necessarily sure how well World War II would do, because I mean, EA, while like they might not necessarily want to admit it, and a lot of Battlefield players like don't necessarily want to admit it, like EA wants to target like the Call of Duty franchises. They're the biggest franchise and their biggest competitor, and they want to bring in some some Call of Duty players into the Battlefield franchise.
Right, that's an excellent point, but you got to think about why they're doing that, right? Why are Call of Duty themselves, we got to go to the core here, why are Call of Duty trying to target that demographic? And the demographic are children. Like, let's get that straight. The way the games are designed are for children. There are kids literally like, you know, dripping from the mouth, drooling over, you know, these skins that mean absolutely nothing. And we got to ask, why is that? Well, when you think about it, when it comes to video games, who has the most free time in the world? children. So of course, the way the games are designed now are going to lean towards that, and that sucks for grown adults and teenagers and older people. And that's why I think, as a general scale, I think that's why a lot of us are really hating like a lot of the first person shooters that are coming out. Not necessarily hating, but maybe not feeling the same way that we used to before, because the games before were designed for adults and now they're designed for children.
So basically, like, there are a lot of like hyper realistic shooters, like I guess Squad or Insurgency, which is one I played, and also like Verdun. I think it's a World War One shooter, and it's really realistic. And the really realistic games are not that fun, and more arcade games like COD probably do better because the market is children. In the end, EA and DICE care about money, so yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that is what EA cares about. And if you look at like something like Battalion, I think they're trying to sort of go away from that. Like they're trying to go back to the games that are designed like for adults, because they know that like Battlefield and COD, like realistically, they're not going to go back to those kind of games, just sales numbers wise. I don't necessarily think they can afford to go back to those kind of games where they're designed more for adults.
Yeah.
So.
Right. Yeah, and I mean, you got to remember as well that the developers of Call of Duty are making so much money off, you know, those little, what is it that they even sell, like keys, like crypto keys and stuff?
Oh my, it's actually absolutely ridiculous. Like their DLC's just going to absolute crap, all for money. It's
literally,
ridiculous.
and premium as well, right? I mean that like a lot of it, it's just all cash. It's all just about the cash money. And I feel like what's happening now is we're actually taking away from our games. Let's take, for example, Counter-Strike Global Offensive. I said this on a video that we'll be releasing very soon, that they have a workshop and they have developers that are, you know, part of the community, and there's a real community involvement. Now, you could say the community test environment is really a part of that, but that's not really enough. I feel like with things like premium, it takes away from things like CSGO, where a lot of fans are just putting in all sorts of stuff into the game, and it adds longevity to these games. Now it just seems to be more of a cash grab.
Yeah, like I personally was like, I'm sort of like working on like a World War II server for Hardline, where like you can just use like the classic weapons and it's only on certain maps. But like when you try to go in and customize it, I mean, they do really limit you, and it's kind of annoying because if you look at other games that have like modding capabilities and stuff like that, it's just annoying that they don't give you those capabilities in Battlefield, because like you said, it does really create a better community, that because people can constantly like work on the game and have more fun with it. And I mean, like the developers don't even have to work on necessarily new content, because the community can make a lot of new content. But the thing, going back to the COD thing, like they released like a couple DLC weapons, and the only way you can get them is through like the cases, and you can earn them in game, but it takes like 3 to 4 games to earn one case, and the weapons only drop like once every 50 or 100 cases. And like if they want to bring new people back into the game, that's just not going to happen, because like people have to play countless games in order to get them. So what people end up doing is just buying these cases, spending like $100 to $200 on them just to get the new weapons. That's like for every DLC. It's kind of ridiculous, and I just really hope that Battlefield doesn't go that way in the future. Like they brought battle packs in, and they allow you to buy the battle packs, which I just think isn't very good, and I just hope they don't bring like weapons into battle packs in the future.
Right, yeah, that would be awful when it comes to gameplay balance, but it wouldn't shock me.
Yeah.
You know, you really don't know. Let's move on to the next topic at hand, and that is the infantry or vehicle focus. What are we thinking here when it comes to the next Battlefield game when it comes to this?
Yeah. So I guess Battlefield Hardline was disappointing for almost every Battlefield fan because of the lack of vehicles like tanks and jets. However, I know it wouldn't make sense to have like jets flying around with cops and criminals, so I think that's why for Battlefield 5 they will have like a vehicle shift and a lot more new vehicles so that people are at least satisfied.
Yeah, I think they're gonna really focus on vehicles in this game, whatever setting it is. Just because, Hardline really lacked vehicles, and I think they might like not necessarily overcompensate, but they may just like put an extra focus on vehicles, which I don't know if I necessarily like. I mean, I personally like Hardline a lot, and I like the infantry focus in it. But I mean, every once in a while, I go through stints where I just all I can do is play with tanks in Battlefield 4, and I'll go on to Gold Railway, and just the tank gameplay on that map is really good. But I honestly think that like either way, it'll be a good game. I just personally hope they don't lean too far in either direction. I hope that there's like a good balance between infantry and vehicular maps.
Yeah, definitely.
Right. Well, I mean, of course, the balance is a really important thing. Now, I lean generally towards infantry focus, mainly because that seems to me to be the best test of skill when it comes to it.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times anyone can hop into a tank and just blow someone with the radius that a tank shell has, of course. But I tend to lean more towards an infantry focus on a general scale. There's a motorbike outside. I don't know if you guys can hear that. Yeah, I was like, there's a motorbike outside, and we're recording this. But yeah. Anyway, I lost my train of thought. Right. So an infantry focus. So what are we going to get if we lean towards an infantry focus? Well, you're going to get more maps that go towards that. So what do we want? Do we want larger scale maps that suit? Because that's what it really comes down to. When you design the maps around infantry or the vehicles, the maps also have to be designed around them as well. So if you're going to decide whether it's going to be infantry or vehicular, that really plays an impact on literally everything. Like that is a really big deal when it comes to the core gameplay.
Like the setting, like it also depends on the vehicles and stuff. For example, like World War One was fought in trenches and stuff, so there wouldn't really be much vehicles there. However, if they choose another setting, maybe it will be more fit for vehicles and stuff. So yeah, the vehicles really does depend on a lot of other things.
Yeah, like World War One, I mean, like they had tanks, but they weren't really used too much for fighting. And I agree, if it was a World War One shooter, it would lean a bit more towards infantry. But at the same time, you can have really like any time setting. For example, have a map like Zavad. I mean, not necessarily like that looks like Zavad, but I just feel that Zavad like has a really good balance between vehicles and infantry. Like there's a couple tanks and LAVs and like one little bird, but it's not overly dominated by vehicles. But at the same time, if you just want to run around with an assault rifle, you can dominate on the map as well. I think that it provides both sets of gameplays pretty well. And while I talked about like Goldmud Railway having really good vehicular gameplay, if you're running around like playing assault, you're just at a giant disadvantage on that map because there's just so much open like fields kind of that you are forced to run across. And I find that whenever I play on that map, if I'm playing infantry, I just die way too often to tanks and other vehicles. Yeah.
That is true, yeah.
Right. All right. Well, let's move on to the next topic, and that is the release date of the next Battlefield game. Now, there are a few things we know. We know that EA's third fiscal year quarter, so it'll be between October 1 and December 31. We know that. The beta will probably be early September, right? It's being developed according to Dan Vaderlands, developer director at DICE, which is what I'm reading here. It's rumored to be released in October 2016 after E3. Confirms fourth quarter of the year, EA's third fiscal year quarter. Okay, so all right, so we know generally where it's going to be released. I was reading off a document there that wasn't completely laid out correctly, but I think we get the general idea, right? That it's going to be the fourth quarter of 2016. It's going to be released. So when we come to that, I mean, it's a pretty simple conclusion. We know this based off what we've been told, and we also know this based off the past when it comes to it. When it comes to Battlefield 3, Battlefield 4. Hardline was actually released in March, wasn't it? Which was a little bit different.
Because it was delayed, though. It was supposed to be released in that same time frame, but way too much feedback from the first beta that it was the exact same as Battlefield 4, so they had to delay it like 7 months. But
Savage.
Yeah. As far as the like when we will get an announcement, I did a video on this like 2 or 3 weeks ago, but if you look at like the past and what they've done in the past, a trailer for the game or a teaser trailer for the game usually comes out only a few days or a week after like the final DLC releases to everybody. So like when it comes out for non-premium users, and for Hardline, the final DLC releases for non-premium on March 15th. So I'd say definitely before the end of March. we'd get an announcement for this game, or at least some sort of teaser trailer on what it's going to be. But as far as like um, what they're gonna do with the game, I mean, I feel like I can't remember if they specifically announced this, but that it's only gonna be like next gen consoles and PC. And you talked about this in a rumor video, Iceman, but like that it could push past like 80-player battles, and I think if you want to like talk about that a little bit more.
Sure. Yeah. So when we think about it, we need to make progress when it comes to player counts because for Battlefield 3, Battlefield 4, and Battlefield Hardline, we've had the same numbers. So I think that to raise the player count would be a great innovation. Now, when we do that, we got to consider also the consoles and the fact that could they even handle this. And that was a point of conjecture in the comment section on that video that I made, that maybe they couldn't even handle 80 players or 120. Now the reason I believe that's not true is because in the beta of Battlefield 4 they tested 80-player servers, so it's absolutely possible that they can do it. Now, the reason that they don't do it is because I feel like they knew how bad the netcode was going to be on release. And if they had 80-player servers with that netcode, no one would, like, it would be even worse than what it was. And it released so poorly, it would have been maybe 100 times worse. We don't actually know, thankfully.
Yeah.
But who knows when it comes to this? There will be, I promise you this, when the beta rolls around, there will be 80-player servers tested, and that'll be very interesting.
Yeah, well, I mean, ultimately, though, I feel like I think they possibly could have released that in Battlefield 4 maybe with the netcode, but I feel like since they necessarily didn't know how much they'd be able to innovate in the future, I feel like they certainly saved some key gameplay features for the next title that's going to come out. So at least if the game doesn't go as well, they have something to innovate with. And yeah, I feel like you're definitely right that the consoles would be able to push past 80 players. And I feel like for Conquest Large that would work, but I feel like these smaller game modes, the gameplay size and scale works pretty well right now. And I don't necessarily know if they'd want to change that. And I feel like they should still offer like 64 player Conquest and maybe just like, I don't know what the name would be called, like Conquest Giant or something for the 80 player servers, but I feel like they should still offer like Conquest Small, Large, and whatever this new form would be.
Conquest Giant, I like it. I dig it. You gotta have 400 players in a server. I mean, if Mag can have 100 players on a PS3, and you're telling me that we can't have 80 players, like, really, bro? Like, is it like what's going on there? But okay, to wrap it up, final thoughts. What are we thinking? What are we thinking when it comes to the next Battlefield game? General thoughts.
Well, I mean, it has to be really good because people probably don't have, well, people have high expectations because Battlefield Hardline was not that great, or at least wasn't as good as previous Battlefields. So I think it really needs to be a top-notch game to really like meet the expectations that people do have, and that it becomes, successful and stuff. So yeah, it really needs to be a good game.
Yeah, well, for me personally, I honestly like whatever setting they pick, I won't necessarily care. Like, I actually wouldn't even mind a futuristic setting because I feel like for DICE, personally, they could take it in so many different directions. I mean, from the rumors I've heard from your channel, I mean, some of the stuff they've talked about sounds really awesome. Like with the Titan Salt mode, some of the rumors for that just sound absolutely awesome. And didn't necessarily think I wanted a 2143 setting, but once I heard some of the rumors and like, even if those are fake, like all the different directions they could take a futuristic game in because there's not held down by history and stuff like that, I just think they could do a lot with it. But at the same time, we haven't really seen too many World War One games or World War Two games with like Battlefield like graphics and the sort of new gameplay style we've got from it. So I mean,
right, the Frostbite engine, like the upgrades to that. We haven't really got a current gen World War II game. I guess that's what Battalion is trying to provide. I think if they did go towards World War II, I think it would be a mistake because of Battalion. Because let me tell you, when that game releases, it is going to be popular. It is really going to take off. I promise you that. Unless the game really sucks, then it'll die. But should take off rather
well.
From
the gameplay we've seen, it looks pretty awesome, but obviously they're going to show the best gameplay in the first trailer they release. But I still think if they go, I mean, I'd still play it and it'd be probably a pretty good game, but if they just continued again with just a modern military shooter, I mean, I don't know how they would shake up the gameplay a lot, especially from Battlefield 3 to Battlefield 4. I mean, between those two games, there weren't too much different. I mean, if you compare like Bad Company 2 to Battlefield 3, they were pretty different, and like the difference between BF4 and BF3 isn't really too much. And I feel like if they were to just go BF5 as a standard modern military shooter, I don't really know how much innovation they could push as far as like gameplay and setting wise.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point. All right, so is that all we've got? Any other thoughts generally?
No, I think that's good, yeah.
All right, excellent. So there it is, guys. Leave your thoughts in the comments section below. What do you want for the next Battlefield game? What are your general thoughts? It'd be great to hear what you think in the comments section below. But hopefully you guys enjoyed this. And if you did, please like, share, subscribe, and peace.